So there is.
I was playing with an Xbox controller.
There is Bastion. So let's. Yeah, there we go.
Yes.
All right.
Beautiful.
So welcome to IGG.
Thanks.
For coming on.
How's it going so far? What hour are you guys into?
This is hour 29 even.
Wow.
Yeah.
29 of 67. We are not halfway there.
You're in the eye of the storm.
Yes. This is when things start getting crazy.
Start.
Sure.
Wait.
I like how that was everybody's
Yeah,
I got it.
No, it's not.
Uh-oh. We've
Okay.
had that happen a couple times.
Okay, does anyone know how to fix that?
Who knows how to fix
Hang on a sec, sorry.
Freezing?
Yeah, apparently our stream.
I'm gonna restart the
We
game.
got it. No, crisis averted.
No, it froze again.
Crisis unaverted.
What's freezing?
Just start the interview.
Yeah. Anyway.
Okay.
So, hey, thanks for coming in.
Yeah, of course.
You are. What was your role on Bastion?
My title over there is creative director. I did all the story stuff and about half of the level design, so writing and level building. We're a pretty small team. We're 7 people on Bastion, so
Nice.
everyone kind of did a lot of different stuff.
Nice.
I have dogs barking in the
So
background.
could you tell us, give us the brief, for people on the stream who do not know what Bastion is, could you give us the brief description?
Sure. Although we like to let the game sort of do the talking for us.
Sure.
It's an action RPG in which there's this kind of omniscient-sounding narrator who is recounting the adventure as you go. It's our first game as a studio. We're called Supergiant Games, and several of us are XEA guys, myself included, and we wanted to kind of go and make something that felt a little more personal, and that we could, make the kind of game that we wanted to play, that sort of thing. And Bastion is the result. It came out a little over a year ago at this point, in the summer of last year, and we're just really, really happy with the response that it's gotten. It's really lived up to all of our kind of wildest expectations as far as how much people liked it, really. So it's been a really good year for us.
Now
in
here's
that
the kid
regard.
whose whole world got all twisted,
So you
leaving
would
him
say you did
stranded
not
on a rock in the sky.
The response that you got, or were you...
I mean, it's hard. Like you could be sort of cautiously optimistic. It's like we made the game that it was very much the game we wanted to make, and I remember thinking before it came out that no matter what happens, like I like this game, and I'm happy with how it turned out, and I hope other people like it too. There's really no way of knowing what other people's experience with something is going to be, especially since especially with something like the way that we used, like the narration stuff in Bastion. I thought was going to be somewhat more polarizing, for example, because we don't necessarily assume that everyone's going to want to listen to someone talking the entire time while they play.
Oh man.
Right.
But it's what made sense for us for the game that we were making, and yeah, thankfully I think it really, the game found its audience, and it seemed to strike a chord with people. So, but no, the short answer is we did not expect. We did not expect that people would still be kind of talking about the game and caring about it, a year and a half after it came out.
Right.
Most games just kind of come and go,
Sure.
and you can't count on your game, being anything special.
Sure. So regarding the narration, that's actually something that, at least in my experience, a lot of people associate very heavily with Bastion.
Yeah.
Certainly the only instance that I've ever seen of a game doing something like that. Can you talk about sort of how you decided to take that path? And I guess how you found that guy.
Yeah, so Logan Cunningham, the voice of our narrator, he's actually a childhood friend of Amir, our studio director, and Darren, our audio director.
Nice.
So these guys have all known each other for years and years, and it's because of that connection that we even have any kind of narration or voiceover in the game, because again, we were a team of 7 by the end. At the beginning, it was only like 2 people, and it slowly grew. So it was all about kind of working within our means and trying to do, using what resources we had available to us. And in the case, we didn't have Bastion isn't the sort of game where we like knew what the design was going to be from day one. We just had like the germ of an idea, which was like an action RPG where you build a world around you, and that was it. And we had to figure out what that meant. And we knew from the start, we had an impression that we wanted it to be a game that was kind of more than just fun to play, and that could leave like a meaningful, it could create a meaningful experience and like leave a lasting impression. Hopefully, at least that was our goal. So we felt we needed to have some kind of narrative to go along with it, and yet we wanted it to be the sort of game that anyone could pick up and start playing, and that wouldn't interrupt the player with a bunch of kind of traditional storytelling techniques, walls of text or stopping for dialogue and all that kind of stuff. At first we didn't know how to even reconcile those things. They seemed at odds. But a few months into development, Amir basically asked Logan to record a few lines, back when we were trying to figure out what to even do with the narrative, back then the game looked really, really awful, and it was just crude gameplay prototype. But as soon as the voice went in there, something pretty special happened. So we kind of never looked back from there. It happened to align well with the kind of story that we had in mind. There was already going to be this kind of mysterious old man caretaker character who's in this Bastion location. It's like, oh man, the whole story could just be told from his perspective. So we just went forward, never looked back, and kept adding more and more narration because we liked it wherever we had it.
Cool. So, in your experience, you mentioned that this is just a few childhood friends that came together to make this company basically, and then sort of expanded from there. Have you you see that frequently in the indie community that you have three people that have known each other for years and get together just to make something cool.
Yeah.
Has that been your experience?
That's certainly been my experience at Supergiant. I mean, I think it's been a really weird time in the game industry in the past few years. I mean, like I mentioned, I and the two co-founders of the studio, we all met each other while working on Command & Conquer at Electronic Arts, and at the time, we left our jobs voluntarily, but a few years ago, it's like studios were shutting down left and right. They're still shutting down. There's still these mass layoffs happening at a lot of bigger studios, and that was like a really grim time, I think, for people working in the game industry. But the silver lining is that a lot of these smaller studios have started up. People who are like, you know what, I want to just, it's okay to fail, but I want to fail on my own terms. I want to just I want to make something that I care about, and then, if it fails, so be it. At least it's going to be my thing. I think that's a feeling that a lot of independent, I can't speak for anyone but myself, but that's something that I feel strongly personally, and I sometimes see echoed by other independent game developers. So it's a time when a lot of these smaller games can really thrive, I think, because digital distribution is out there and strong, and you can make like a really specific idea, and there are methods out there to help that game find its audience. So it's a good time for these kind of smaller downloadable games.
So actually, you guys ported this to iOS, right? For the iPad?
Yeah, we just came out on iPad like a month and change ago, something like that.
And Chrome as well, if I remember.
Yeah.
Since we last interviewed you, you ported it out to Chrome.
They're in the Chrome web store.
Yeah.
Yep.
So what made you decide to go in those directions?
Yeah,
you said you can simplify even further to get.
Yeah, that's a good question. I mean, I have to admit, I'm surprised to still. It's amazing to us that there's still been demand for Bastion, over a year after the game has come out, and that over a year later we're still making new versions of the game and stuff like that. Really, those decisions come from both, our impression that there's there's a potential demand there, that we could bring the game to new players, and we also want to stay very nimble as a small studio. And again, referring to the kind of chaos I was talking about, we don't know what people are going to be playing games on in another year or two or what. So we just want to be as experienced as possible making games for different platforms. The iPad version of Bastion was our first chance to really try to tackle touch controls and the kind of challenges that come with that. So that was a whole new experience for us, and just like kind of a really interesting design challenge. That's part of the reason we wanted to do it, because now we've made a game that works with mouse and keyboard with a video game controller. We've made a touch version of the game, so that kind of experience helps make us more comfortable as we kind of look to the future and wonder what the heck people are going to be playing games on, because we just want to make sure that we can adapt to the changing times, and stuff like that helps us do it.
Okay, fair enough. So I guess, can you tell us about, well, you sort of alluded to some of the unique challenges there. Actually, Matt, did you have any questions?
Well, I mean, I think what you're getting at is so each platform has its own set of challenges. You guys have, I mean, you've put it on the Chrome store and now the iOS and everything. How was the development process different on these different platforms with the different capabilities and everything? Obviously.
Yeah, I mean the iOS version or the iPad version is probably our most involved version, past the original launch. Although Chrome was quite involved too. Chrome was like a pretty hardcore engineering effort, whereas iPad was like a combination of a pretty hardcore engineering effort, but also like a big design effort, because we kind of went back to the drawing board completely when it came to the controls, and had to think do a lot of soul searching about like what is the essential experience that we're trying to preserve here, because if we're going to bring this game to the iPad, it we wouldn't have designed these controls, that have already existed for the iPad. We would have designed something that made better use of the touch controls. So we had to think about it from those terms, and we ended up making some pretty big decisions around how the game plays. If you've played that version of the game, and also like the Xbox or PC version, you'll have seen some of the pretty big differences. But that took a lot of iteration and just a lot of trying different stuff. But that's like a lot of the fun of the design process is just that. And we're really happy with how it turned out. I mean, the response, it's actually like the highest rated version of the game is the iPad version, which is sort of surprising to us in some respects, because it is based on an existing game. But it goes to show that it did manage to like reach a new audience who hadn't kind of played anything like that before, and we thought it would be a good fit there. But yeah, it took us like a good 5 months or so to bring the game over to iPad, and that's of course in addition to all the control stuff, we went back into like basically every single level of the game and tuned them all for difficulty, and tweaked all the weapons and encounters, like all this like really kind of surgical stuff, because it was important to us that it feel just right on every new platform we come out on.
One of the things about Bastion that's unique among video games is that is the economy of writing, where a lot of writing-oriented games will just give you info dumps that you have to sit through.
Yeah.
And could you tell us about the philosophy of that?
Yeah, that's at the heart. So I appreciate that term for it as well. We absolutely try to pack in like as much meaning. Even though a guy is talking almost the entire time you're playing, we try to make everything he says important and kind of rich with meaning. And he, as a character, is even sort of designed that way, that he's a man who can kind of express a lot of information using just a few words. That is, the essential reason for that is because, again, we didn't want the narrative to interrupt the play experience at all. And really, when you get down to it, Bastion is sort of an action game. You can move through the world really quickly. You can like resolve a lot of the fights really fast if you're skillful at the game. So the narrator had to keep up. Essentially, there was no other choice except for him to like get information out quickly. And so that was sort of the gameplay driving force behind it. But then there's another side to it which is that it's just like it's good practice for writing in general, to not waste words. So it was really good to have that sort of gameplay pressure of like, we have to get the information out there, in just a couple of seconds. That really made us push on the writing pretty hard to make sure that he spoke a certain way, and I think it like contributed to the tone of the game and the character's whole identity. But it was you know, the writing was a pretty intensive process all the way through the project, even when we knew exactly, you know, where the story was going and what was supposed to sort of happen at the end of a level. It was still tricky just to, you know, get it just right, and there's a lot of iteration there.
You spoke earlier, and you just mentioned again how much Logan's voice acting, when he first came in and did a couple of lines, and your gameplay was still a prototype, how much that really sort of set in stone the feel of the game. I'm interested specifically in the art style as well. It's very, very unique in for almost anything that I've seen. How much of the art and some of the other sort of aesthetic elements of the game were influenced just by Logan and that sort of thematic beginning that he gave, and how much was sort of envisioned already?
Yeah, so that's the easy answer is the art style is directly the result of Gen Z, our art director. She joined the project at a point where its look was still kind of we knew we wanted to make an isometric game, and it was going to be an action RPG and stuff like that, and we actually had a good sense of the tone and the story and the atmosphere and stuff like that, but really it took Jen to get in there and start creating artwork based on, you know, her impression of what that was to really drive it all home. But we had we were talking about like the tone of the project from the very beginning, even when like I mentioned, the design of it was still undefined, but we were talking about the kind of feeling we wanted it to create. And Logan's voice was a big contributor to that, to really defining that like in a concrete way. And the other side of it was Darren Korb, our audio director, and he was actually sort of the first with his music to take our ideas for the tone of this kind of fantasy frontier world, and he started making music to it. You know, even though the game, like I said, it looked really, really crude at this point, as soon as that music got in there and then the voice got in there, it started to take shape, and you started to get a picture in your head. And then Jen, our art director, was kind of the last ingredient, where she came on, you know, the music was there, the voice was there, and then she gave it the artwork, and it started all coming together at that point.
So several people in the stream and around have asked, what's next for Supergiant?
Yeah, it's we get that a lot, and we're super tight-lipped about it. You know, we've been keeping busy this year, and the team is sticking together, and we want to keep making games. I can say that much for sure. And we but we haven't said anything more. And I think part of the reason for that is, like in Bastion's case, it was more than a year into development before we unveiled it or anything like that. Like with the kind of game that Bastion is, where the atmosphere is important, it's like, I think if we had talked about it before we had stuff to show, it would have seemed really dumb. Like the pitch on paper, you know, an action RPG where an old man talks to you the whole time does not sound that good. You really have to. So in our case, it takes us a while to get our ideas to kind of coalesce into something that is presentable, and we don't want to. It's also like I often get bummed out when games are like announced too early or something. They're just kind of, you know, they're announced and then it's like years before I can finally play the thing or something. So yeah, we appreciate everyone's patience with us, but yeah, we will certainly do our best to. We feel like we've gotten an. It's just the response to Bastion has made it so that we can once again we can continue making games on our own terms, and we certainly don't want to. We want to make the most of that opportunity once again, as we try to do in the first place. So I hope whatever we come up with will be able to have a similar impact. Because yeah, I mean, we just want to keep going and we're making stuff that makes people feel the way Bastion did, I guess.
Kayan Nasaki of I Want to Be the Guy fame is asking, I think, a fantastic question. He says, how intentional was the broken nature of the world in relationship with the modularity of the art assets and their reusability? getting the most out of the assets must have been very important for your team.
Yeah, spoken like an experienced game developer, he is absolutely right. We were super nervous about that during development. I mean, Jen, we had one artist on the team. We worked with a couple of contractors as well, but just one full-time artist, and she was, she always felt under pressure. We're trying to make like a full world, right, and like a grand adventure, and we felt that required a certain amount of artwork, and we were pretty worried that we'd be able to like sort of have enough. But our engine that Gavin Simon, our co-founder, created, it's been super robust for us. If you look carefully throughout the game, you will see that a lot of stuff is reused. It's kind of tinted and rotated, and put in the foreground or put in the background, all this kind of stuff. We used a lot of little tricks with lighting and those kind of like scaling, rotating assets to make different areas of the game look very distinct, even though some of the actual assets within them are reused. So we try to find a good balance there where it didn't feel like you were just going through the same environments over and over. And in fact, they're three sort of distinctly different environments, but we found that by kind of mixing and matching some of our art elements, we really were able to make each area of the game feel distinct. So we're really happy with how that turned out, and I think at least a little bit surprised. We thought we were, like I said, that was something we were concerned with in the middle of development.
Kayan says that it was amazing what you managed to do because she was amazingly
Thanks, yeah.
efficient.
Yeah, and by the way, since people often ask, it's like it is a fully 2D game, and you see the world sort of forming up around you as you go through it, but all that stuff is all hand placed. Like all the levels are sort of every little obstacle and tile in the game was placed there by hand, and we have the ability to like sort of tune the distance at which the tiles come up and the speed at which they come up and all this kind of stuff. So we kind of. We want, like I said, for all those reasons, we wanted to make each area of the game like feel different, and that's part of the kind of world building process, that we didn't want it to just feel like you were going from one generic level to another, but that each part of the game felt like it was contributing to the story.
Nice. Your cat sounds unhappy.
I think that's a child, but yeah.
Another person in chat is wondering, was there like a conscious decision to put important items in areas that you cannot return to?
So that's an interesting question. It was a conscious decision that you could not return to areas you've already visited. That to us was important for a bunch of reasons, including the narrative, which is that like we want it to feel like a continuous narrative that's building toward a conclusion. And if you could just like grind the same level over and over, and the narrator is just saying the same stuff over and over, it would affect the pace of the game in a way that we weren't comfortable with. We later added a score attack mode where you could do that, but we didn't want that to be the default experience that people had with the game. As for like missing items, we had a little stopgap measure, which is that even though you can like miss a hidden item when you went through a level the first time, we have a structure called the lost and found, where anything that you don't pick up the first time around is going to be there in the lost and found for you to purchase later. So we made sure that it was actually impossible for you to like completely skip certain things, because we didn't want people to have that experience.
All right.
So you mentioned hand crafting all of the levels. My question is, do you see a mod API or a level designer coming out for Bastion?
We thought about it. We don't have plans to release our editor at this point. But like it's not ready for prime time, and it's not documented, and we don't have the bandwidth to like support a lot of questions about it and stuff. But it's something that if like the game is moddable, all of our data is exposed, and people have made like fan translations into Japanese and Korean and Turkish and stuff like that. So like localizations have been the most common type of Bastion mod. But yeah, we haven't released our full editor just because we had a bunch of we didn't think that it was like in a sufficient state for people to actually make content for the game. Partly because again, like the narration and stuff is a big part of Bastion, and we can't unfortunately include Logan with the editor for people to. I guess people could, in theory, record their own narration or something and put it in. But yeah, I mean, to be honest, we didn't get. There wasn't a ton of demand. Like, we didn't have a lot of people asking. But as we like to say, we don't rule anything out for the future, so you never know. But yeah, it's not in the cards at the moment.
Now, I feel like we should ask Logan to do some sort of narration for charity. Has he done that for any other causes?
He certainly comes to like PAX and stuff like that. I mean, people ask him to do the voice all the time, and I think he's finally gotten comfortable with it because his natural speaking voice sounds very different from the narrator. You would never guess that the narrator's voice comes from that guy. But yeah, he's on Twitter and everything. You can just hit him up and see what happens, or come to us if you have an idea. We've done like Bastion was in the Humble Indie Bundle. And we did like a original narration for the trailer for the Humble Indie Bundle 5, and part of that goes to charity. So he's done charity stuff in that regard. But yeah, we're open to anything.
Epic Art Fail in chat is asking, the character Rux is referred to as the Stranger. Is it supposed to be more than a little obvious that he's inspired by the Stranger Sam Elliott in The Big Lebowski?
Yeah.
As a tack on, why is the main character why is he referred to as the Kid?
So I think like first of all, yeah, he's not I wouldn't like I think the concept of like a southern drawl speaking stranger is not unique to the film The Big Lebowski. That's sort of to us that was more of an archetypal thing in sort of the Western genre. So it's not necessarily a direct reference. As for him referring to the player character as the Kid, that again is like part of the tone and says something about the world of the game, and it's kind of a reflection of how we wanted to sort of balance the main character, where we wanted him to be anonymous, like the sort of character that you can really imprint on, like he's kind of like you in this world, and yet he is a character with an identity and a background and so forth. So we wanted to find like a right balance there, where it wasn't a character who was like well, to put it another way, sometimes you play games where like you're playing as a really specific character, and then you're having cutscenes or something like that, and you're like, I would never do the things that this character is doing. Like I don't even like this guy's personality. Like we didn't want the main character's personality to be like super in your face, because we already had that with the narrator. So instead, he's this kind of starts off as this kind of anonymous character, the Kid. But I think by the end, when you hear the narrator say the Kid, it kind of it takes on a different meaning, I think, over time, and it becomes more of like a term of endearment. So that all that kind of stuff was interesting to us, and why he actually has a name in our backstory. It's not revealed in the game, and we decided not to reveal it just because it didn't seem right at that point. It seemed almost like a midichlorians thing of like you don't.
Is it too much to hope for that you'll tell us right now?
No,
it is.
Okay. Well, we would love.
I don't want to. It's one of those things. It's like we want the world of the game to have a certain amount of mystery to it, and people may all have their theories about what his name is, and we don't want to invalidate some of that stuff. We like that it's the kind of world where people people wonder about certain things about the world, but hopefully not in a way where it's like, oh, I was left hanging about this detail. We wanted it to have a strong sense of closure, but to feel like a rich world as well. Find that kind of balance.
Well, we would love to keep asking you questions for the rest of the marathon, but as always, we have a million games to play.
Cool.
Before you sign off, if we're really interested, and I'm sure a lot of us are, in following Supergiant, and especially maybe keeping an eye out on what you guys are working on, how can we take a look, how can we keep in touch, and where and when might we see some hints about your upcoming title?
Who else could have
So in order, as far as like some hints, I just can't say. We're not on a timeline. Bastion took us around 2 years or so to make, so I don't think we're the kind of team that wants to spend like 5 years or whatever making stuff. So hopefully that helps sort of ballpark it. But that's as much as I could say. As far as where to find us, we are Supergiant Games on Twitter. I manage that Twitter account myself, and any news from us is gonna happen there first. So we try to be super responsive to people with any questions and whatever else. So you could always check in with us there, or just kind of keep an eye out for whatever it is we will have news.
Okay, you hear that, chat? So all these other questions that you guys are spamming us with, you gotta send it over to Twitter account. There you go.
Thank you so much, Greg. It's always a pleasure to have you on. Thanks for the support. Thanks for the great game. And I think that's it.
Well, we'll
Thanks,
see you
guys.
next year.
From all,
Yeah, fun.
absolutely.
Sounds good.
Take care.
See ya.
Greg's always fun to talk to.
Yeah.
I talked to him at PAX. We actually have a video interview with him at PAX, along with a bunch of other video interviews from different devs, some of which we've talked to, some of which we couldn't get for this year. Those will be going up sometime after the marathon. I just got swamped. I gotta go get back to work.
If by interview do you mean video gush?
That one was a bit of a
Shit.
video
Oh,
gush.
okay. I was worried. I was worried if you would.
We talked about the iOS release. It was great.
My name is Matt, and blah blah blah.
Wait,
blah,
I love your game.
lavish,
That was, if you guys were here for IGG last year, that was my interview with Kelly Santiago. It
Yeah.
was like,
Yeah.
oh god, your game, it's so good.
Okay, bye.
No, I will not be doing the interviewing because I'm afraid I will do it again.
That's why I asked
Journey is
questions
out.
I took the
instead of
control so
Matt.
you guys could handle
Yeah, Journey's out, so I'm just like, oh, Journey.
a little bit loud.